Hey everybody, I don't know about you, but as you've watched out over the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine is not just isolated to Eastern Europe. It's spread all over the world, and you can see it in market instabilities. You can see it here. People who do not think that that war is affecting you, all you got to do is look at gas prices. You look at your food prices. You see the global change that has happened. But you know something that's also affected investments as well. And I've said all along, legacy precious metals is your navigator. They're the ones that see you through to get to the next level. The good news about this is even with market volatility, market instability, you've got options. And gold prices are rising as investors turn to gold. And gold presents a hedge against this inflation and that protects you against the weakening dollar, which we are seeing. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust to deal with gold and silver and the other precious metals. You need this investment. You need this as part of your portfolio to keep you buffered from what we're seeing in the world, war and volatility in the market. This is where you need to be. Call Legacy Precious Metals today. Be proactive about this. Get on board with it. Call them at 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com, your navigator in a volatile world of investments.
Do you want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
Hey everybody, Doug Collins. Welcome back to the podcast. Glad to have you with us today. Got a good friend. Not only of a lot of things, got to know him in Congress. He is. You see him on Fox. You see him on Newsmax. You see him all over the place. He is just one of our conservative leaders in Congress right now. He's a great guy, good friend, Andy Biggs, Congressman from Arizona. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Doug, great to be with you as always, and of course, we miss your presence in Congress. Did a great job, and not just working on committee oversight, which is probably something we might actually get into a little bit today, but we sure miss you when you had the gavel on the floor of the House as Speaker Pro Tem. The Democrats can't run a one-car parade, so we need somebody up there who could actually facilitate making the place work a little bit better.
Who knows? I may offer myself as a potential fill-in Speaker Pro Tem sometime.
There you go.
Have to look at it.
There you go.
As we go. No, it was fun. I do miss. There's some things, Andy. I really miss about DC. There's other things I do not miss at all. And some of that just that camaraderie, getting stuff done, and that's something. Let's just take off here for a little bit. That's something I see is not happening right now. I see, the Democrats basically running, Pelosi running things by fiat, just the way she wants to run it. I mean, why in the world y'all still doing proxy voting is beyond me. And a lot. Really, what's the mood right now? Because you're out here in the electorate, you're hearing, oh, well, the Republicans are going to take it, but then you see, no real vision. You hear a lot back and forth. What does it feel like though among the members and the Democrats as well? Because I know you talk about, you talk to them as well.
Well, I think that the division that people see from the outside is real, and this. We've gone from, in just 6 years, gone from being able to work with people across the aisle. We have our differences for sure, but it wasn't personal. It was actually business. You can bash the other side, but in the end, you knew that they were people, they had families and whatnot. But now there's been this sense of kind of dehumanization. So you got that going on. And then you have this election that's coming up, and Republicans, justifiably so, have some confidence that we're going to take it back. The question is how big a majority, how big a margin is going to be there. There's going to be a question on what are we going to do? And because that's what people tell me all the time. All over Arizona, and then I've been all over the country, as you know. And people say to me, well, what are you guys going to do? And I say, well, this is kind of the plan I have. And I've got an America First plan at bigsforcongress.com. And I mean, you can go there and see that. And it talks about how you do. And you know this, I mean, you get leverage points, even though that Biden's going to be in the White House. You got the Democrat there. But there are things that we can do to either slow them down or actually facilitate getting some things in our agenda across the finish line.
Well, and I think, Andy, that's the one thing that I've been preaching about here for a long time, talking about is look, you got to have an agenda. And I think, let's just assume, and I'm just going to take everything in just the sort of the assumptions. We get a Republican speaker, Kevin, whoever the speaker is, Kevin. They've got to have an aggressive agenda that says, okay, let's get as much as we can coming out of the House. If the Senate goes along with part of it, great. If they don't, fine. But then we come back and we have a normal give and take of a conference committee. We didn't see that those last couple of years. We were in the majority before we went to the minority. But you've hit on something that I also want to, before we move on to sort of a Republican agenda, is this issue of even in 19 and 20, and we were there for the impeachment, you and I for Mueller. I mean, we went through all this together. You could tell that overnight change. It was like from 2018 to 2019, the Democrats almost just took a new persona. But it's gotten even worse even since then. When we were railing about rules being broken then and rules not followed, it's taken a turn for even worse, hasn't it?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So when the Democrats came in, Nancy Pelosi came in and changed all the rules, right? I mean, and actually arrogated or centralized power to herself. Yeah, the Democrats actually did that. And now, though, the last 2 years, Doug, has been really, really vitriolic. There's almost no way to talk and work with folks across the aisle. Now we've done it. I mean, I've worked with of all things getting some legislation through with Democrats that we agreed on. But the point is, they are so focused, and I know this is kind of crazy to say it because even sometimes when I think about it, I think this is just absurd. They're so focused on preventing Donald Trump from ever holding office again, and anybody who supports him, that it's a constant attack. I mean, so you have some of the most petty stuff ever. So Marjorie Taylor Greene puts up a poster outside of her office, and she says there's only two genders or whatever the poster was. The chief of staff of a member, Doug, goes and rips it down. And the Capitol Police said, well, we're not going to charge him or anything like that. And he's not disciplined by his boss, and he's not disciplined by the Democrats. And that's happened more than once. And I won't say who, but I was talking to a Democrat about a month and a half ago. I'm in my car. He's walking along at beep. We're friends. I say, hey, how you doing? We're talking. He says, hey, Andy, I'm probably the only Democrat that'll even talk to you these days.
And that's sad. And Andy, that's just really sad.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, we got a lot of things done in that the first 2 years of the Trump administration, and even before, when we were in control in the House and then in the Senate. And we had Democrats who worked with us. One of the things that I remember just adamantly, and one that you and I had talked about, was there's several bills that I had worked with Democrats on, from criminal justice to music to everything else. But one that really bothered me was we were dealing with the anti-Semitic issues on college campuses. If you remember that bill, Trump finally had to do it by executive order, because we started in 2019. I said, okay, Jerry Nadler, who was on the bill, we had this bill before, this should go easy. And Deutsch and Nadler, neither one would have a conversation with it. The same bill they had signed on to for like 6 Congresses in a row, all of a sudden had problems. And, that's something that, you can't have that. We can fight these battles, but you got to have a time in which you say, okay, let's get something done. And I think that's what people are really frustrated about.
Yeah, and I think outside looking in, okay. So my opinion is there is a deep state. Okay, there's a deep state in Washington D.C., but there's also always been a sentiment that you could come across and try to do what you think is best for the country. So if you had like the anti-BDSM, what was it, BDS, anti-BDS bill that you're talking about. When you start looking at that, why that should be a universal bill that, just totally bipartisan. But right now, the left, the hard left, is come across and controls that conference. When you were there, Doug, the Progressive Caucus had maybe 15 to 22 members at any one time. And the Progressive Caucus, for people who don't know, is the most leftist group in the United States Congress. Today, Doug, there's more than 100 members of the Democrat Party in Congress that are part of the Progressive Caucus. They've completely changed the trajectory of the Democrat Party and the United States Congress as an institution.
Yeah, it's you can see it, and I think that's the the real concern that you're having here in getting stuff done, and you're seeing it now. It's where I guess what concerns me, and is when I first got to Congress. I mean, we were in a majority in the House, the Senate was a Democrat, and Obama was in the White House. But even through that, we would have bills that would go through that were bigger pieces of legislation that actually did go through some semblance of regular order, some semblance of the floor, then went to the Senate and actually got signed. It looks like now, in all fairness, the only thing of substance, and it's bad substance, is getting passed is a spending bill, a reconciliation package, or something. The regular legislation just seems to have grinded to a halt.
Well, it has and it hasn't. It has in the sense that regular order is not there. So for people wanting to know about regular order, you're going through committees, you're going through the rules, you're allowed to debate amendments on the floor and introduce amendments, all of the stuff that you would normally think in a legislative body would happen. That doesn't happen anymore. But if you take a regular bill, Doug, what they're doing is they're pigeonholing it. These are mega omnibus bills packages that they're doing now. I mean, it's not like where they're taking 10 bills and sticking them together and cobbling them together, which I think is wrong anyway. We're talking 3,000 pages with 75 bills in them. I mean, it's they don't have anything to do with. You tell me what the Safe Banking Act has to do with the National Defense Authorization Act. It has nothing to do with it. And for people who don't know, Safe Banking Act is allowing easing banking regulations for marijuana profits. So that has nothing to do with military at all and defense and the defense of the United States. But that's what's happening. The other thing you said something. If I just want to touch on this real quick because I think you're exactly right on. When I first got to Congress in 2017. My observation was, having come from the state legislature for a long time and having been the Senate president in Arizona, I couldn't understand why the House, we would say, well, we're only going to do this bill as good as, this right here, because the Senate will never pass it if we do it. And my question ultimately was two things on that. Why don't we do the very best bill we can do out of the House? And number two, why don't we quit negotiating against ourselves as members of the House? Let's just do what the House can do. And if we have this magnificent, perfect bill that we get every Republican on, and we send it to the Senate, then the pressure's on the Senate, and the Senate has to decide what they want to take out, what they're willing to do. And then, like you say, then you come back into a conference committee. But we wouldn't have negotiated against ourselves right out of a great position. We would have done the greatest bill. And the American people would have said, look, the House is really getting it done. And I just don't understand that. And I hope we don't do that again. I hope what you said is right, that when we get there, that the Republicans do the very best pieces of legislation we can, send it to the Senate, and they'll decide what they're going to do with it.
Well, and I think, Andy, this is one of the things, though, that has to happen. And I think, and I've said this before, and it's been interesting to see the reaction. And after I think they understand what I'm trying to say, I think they get it. The Democrats do stuff that we don't do. Okay, if you remember Pete Sessions years ago always saying, winners do what losers don't do. And what we've watched in the 3.5 years of the Democrats being back in power, people forget Democrats have only controlled the House for 8 years in the past almost 30. 8 years in the past 30. So again, for Republicans to claim, now here's why we can claim that so much is bad is because in those 8 years, 4 and 4, they've done more in those 4 years than, frankly, a lot of times we've done in a lot of the times we've had. And how they do it, and you've watched this on the floor. They know that their number is, say, 218 is the constitutional number, but if there's less in the House, it's 2. All right, we got to get 218 votes. That means I don't care how we get here. If some of you want to vote no, then if we don't get to 218, then you're going to vote yes. You're going to be a part of this, and they brought ideological parties along. At some point, Republicans, especially getting, and you've talked about this, I've talked about this, to get that best bill we can, it's a team effort. And you can't have moderates, you can't have conservatives, you can't have middle of the roaders saying, oh, no. But we've got to get this passed, and you get that 90% bill. And for some of them, it'll be a hard swallow, but they're not going to lose their election. They're not doing moral convictions. Is there that conviction you see coming into this new Congress from Republicans to say, let's push our bills, let's push our stuff that we want to, and deal with the consequences with it, and put Biden in a bad position?
Yeah, I want to be careful how I say this. Let me just say this. I hope so, Doug. I hope that there's going to be voices at the table for every person, to get something done. Which is getting back to it. That's why I drafted an America First plan. I just felt like I did this a year ago. I said, look, we got to have some kind of plan to get out there of some basic things that we think should be happening. And it was on inflation and economy, the border, the woke politics and schools, the transparency that needs to be there in school, all the things that I think that Americans, and it's not, Doug, it isn't just Republicans that care about those issues. It is Americans that care about those issues. And we can really go forward, because how about a 90% issue? A 90% issue is on an election integrity. You don't have to talk about fraud in the elections or anything else. You could do a 90% issue that says, we think you should have to show legal identification when you go to vote. 90% of Americans say, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether you're Latino, Black, Asian, Caucasian. It just simply doesn't matter. 90% of people say, yeah, if you buy alcohol, you got to show an ID. Unless you're an illegal immigrant getting on a plane, you got to show legal ID. If you're an illegal immigrant, you get to show your.
Well, you just got your manila folder, Andy.
Yeah,
come on.
yeah, exactly. You get
to I'm flying next week down to Mississippi to help one of your going to be your new members, and I thought about just taking a manila envelope and saying, "Look, I got papers here. I'm okay."
Take your deportation order with you. That's considered good ID. Oh my gosh. But that's it, Doug. I think you really hit on it. And I think there's a lot of us who've been saying this for some time. We need to have a positive, aggressive agenda so the American people say they don't trust either party right now. We want them to trust us. We want them to trust us. And you better give them something to hang their hat on. Give them a peg to hang their hat on.
I agree. Let's switch gears off of what the new Congress looks like. We're going to get back to it in a minute, because I want to talk about Georgia, Arizona. We've both visited each other's states. We know the states pretty well as far as political. And I want to talk about, I think they're very similar in this cycle. But on another topic, when, we had to deal with all the investigations, the Russiagate, the Muellergate, all this crap. And just within the last, few hours before we were taping this podcast, Zuckerberg goes on Joe Rogan's podcast and says the FBI basically told them to hide the Hunter Biden laptop information. We already know that the Times and others did this before the election. It doesn't me. And I'm on the outside watching now, as I was on the inside watching it, screaming to the top of my lungs saying this was going on. You tack that with Mar-a-Lago, you tack this with everything else. Is it just become inherent now that the DOJ and FBI in particular, others, just have had so much issues that their credibility, unfortunately, is at a point where nobody could trust them?
Well, I think their credibility is shot. The Mark Zuckerberg thing yesterday, which I thought was weird, because he says, well, yeah, they came and told us there's going to be this Russian dump, and so we didn't hide it. We just limited access. Well, you censored it. You censored it.
They admitted what
And-
we've always said they were doing.
Exactly. And it was our own government, a police agency that was using its power to impact an election. Now, in 2016, they used that same power to try to tarnish the Trump campaign. In 2020, they tried to suppress bad information about the Biden campaign. And, Doug, and I'll just say this about Zuckerberg. He doesn't come into this thing with clean hands. He spent over $400 million trying to influence the election through Secretary of State's offices and election offices around the country, even in Arizona. And I know in Georgia, too. He gave money to various elections departments that had impact on the election. So yeah, I mean, Doug, you and I both know this. The Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee are both going to have to take a really long look at DOJ and FBI, because I want to know who authorized anybody from the FBI to go to Facebook and say, hey, this is going to happen here, and you might want to really tamp down on this and not let this out.
Well, what is interesting to me is this connection with big tech, and before probably 2016 or so, and during that camp run up before you got there, I had actually took several trips. I've been to Google's headquarters, been to Facebook's, been to all of them, and one of the things that it was amazing to me is they could sit there and tell you what they could do. Okay, they could say we can track these suicide issues, we can track these child porn issues, all this kind of. But yet, if you ask them to track something like pirating in a movie or pirating of software, things like oh no, we can't do that. They basically just admit up to the point of saying we're going to do what we want to do, and just deny whatever we can't. What amazed me though most, and you hit on it there for a second, is it basically from the, and I'm going to even roll it over to Twitter as well. Twitter, Facebook just admitted, in all intents and purposes, what all those Republicans that we call crazy, Collins, Jordan, Biggs, all these guys, we called them crazy, we were doing. And yet the media, the only firestorm I've seen a little bit in the media is, well, he said it. Nobody's talking about the implications of it.
I know. I mean, that's what blows my mind, because if you saw the polling after the laptop had been verified by the New York Times and the Washington Post, and the polling came out and said, would that have changed your vote? Not. I mean, it was an isolated variable. It wasn't talking about immigration issues, border issues, inflation, economy. It was said, would the Hunter Biden laptop, with all of the stuff with China and Burisma, would that have impacted how you voted? And 57% to 60%, depending on your poll, said, absolutely, I wouldn't have voted for Biden. It impacted the election. And for the grace of God, it would have impacted the election in 2016. That's for sure. But this is Doug. This is dangerous stuff for a constitutional free republic. I tell you that.
It is, and let's take this a step further. You're an attorney. I'm an attorney. We've looked at this. We've looked at it from the DOJ perspective. The double standard, and again, I'm not going to tread lightly here, but I'm just going to tread honestly here. You see people like Peter Navarro taken out of an airport terminal in handcuffs. You see Roger Stone's house raided in the middle of the night or morning by multiple agents, tipped off to CNN, by the way. You see what we just saw at Mar-a-Lago. We see, we've seen this over and over again. And yet, and again, and I know some people may roll their eyes, but I'm sorry, you're just going to keep rolling your eyes till something's actually done about this. You see a laptop that has Hunter Biden with prostitutes, with drugs, with a gun he's not supposed to have. Where are all the gun control advocates about him forging his gun application, saying that he was legal to have a gun? Where are all these people? Why is this case taking so long? If you in Arizona, me in Georgia, we had Joe Smith out here on the side, he would already been under the jail by now. I mean, they can't justify this anymore.
No, I mean, absolutely right. I mean, don't forget the FBI had that laptop from December of 2019. December of 2019. And now you have whistleblowers that have come to Jim Jordan and the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate to Ron Johnson and Senator Grassley, and they have said, look, we were told by our FBI supervisors that we could not investigate this laptop, nor could we disclose it publicly. I mean, Doug, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? I mean, it speaks to corruption, and I hate to use that word, but I'm not quite sure what else you can say about it. If these allegations are true, and then you had Christopher Wray just 2 months ago testifying in the Senate saying, "Oh well, yeah, if that happened, that would be if there really was suppression, that would be troubling." That's it. That would be troubling.
Yeah, that's the reason. Look, and I know that, and it's frustrating. It was I just didn't get it. Yesterday, you had former Attorney General Bill Barr talk about Ray's doing okay, and there's no politicization. Again, I think he's marginalized himself on this issue, especially. But let me go back and point something out to the listeners on this podcast, the viewers on this podcast. You just hit it perfectly. They had this in December of 19. Okay, this is when they had the laptop. So you had the whole year before the election. So they've had this. We're now hearing that they were suppressed, that they were told not to do anything about it. We already know they were in cahoots with the social media and the mainstream media. This is why I think Chris Wray probably doesn't need to stay for his own well-being and also for the American public. This is after Comey, Strzok, Page, and McCabe. This is after, they quote say we cleaned all this up. No, you didn't. Undoubtedly, there was something still left there after all of these folks that you and I had helped and watched issue to the door were still there doing this. How deep does it go? I mean, and I'm, you don't want to get to the, and look, for anybody out there that thinks this is anything to go attack FBI, to go do anything. No, you're an idiot. Do not, you don't go attack the FBI. You don't physically go do it. We have political discussion from our members of Congress to say, look, we got to fix this, But how can they deny that this is something that should not be fixed?
I don't know. I mean, you remember when Horowitz's original report came out identifying, McCabe, Strzok, Page, all of those bombshells. And Horowitz, Inspector General Horowitz, is the Inspector General for the Department of Justice. He did a great job revealing stuff, and I know you did too. I had personal one-on-one conversations with him where he went actually beyond his reports and kind of giving us additional information. Doug, this has been going on, and Christopher Wray has not fixed it. In fact, Christopher Wray, in my opinion, is in denial. Bill Barr, Christopher Wray, I get it. They're institutionalists. They want to protect the institution and preserve the institution of the FBI, DOJ, etc. But you cannot allow these police state apparatus for political purposes to go after and attack people. You know what the biggest manhunt in American history is? It's the January 6 rioters. I mean, to me, they've arrested 850 people. You've got people that, Doug, still in pretrial detention of over a year and a half. And I look at it and I say, I don't get that. I was in practice law in this area. You did. We know that pretrial detention, there is a set of guidelines that the federal judge is supposed to look at. Why are these people still in prison? Still in jail before.
And I think, the thing here, and for anybody who wants to look at it, I'm not, and I think, Andy, you're the same way.
Yeah,
we're not even talking about guilt or innocence here. This is simply a process that I've actually, and I'm sure you have as well, I've had clients who've been charged with, aggravated felony, attempted murder, and others who've had their cases almost brought to trial in less time than this. Major things. It's just a problem. I want to switch gears before before we move on and we get going here. Arizona and Georgia, both very turmoil after the last election cycle, coming into one. We both have big Senate races. Both are looking to flip. Everybody focuses on, the North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Missouri races, which are all needed because we got to hold all of those. Those are going to be important because you got to hold. But just holding doesn't make a difference. You got to flip some. Georgia and Arizona are your two main flip ones, if you would. where do you see it now that we're through the primaries? We're through, we're, and also I'd love to get your comments on this post-Dobb, Democratic talking point that, the Democrats are now all of a sudden much more motivated. How do you see it in Arizona?
Okay, so let's take the Dobbs first. I don't see an increased motivation on the part of Democrats over Dobbs. That's not where in my opinion, that's not where we're seeing the issue go forward. The Democrats are spending money like water out here, and I'm sure they are in Georgia for the Senate race. Arizona is we've got big races. We've got a big governor's race, statewide office races for elections, official, secretary of state, etc., and the Senate race. The resources are stretched super thin out here, and I know Blake Masters, who's the Republican nominee, he is, he's trying to raise money, as is Kerry Lake, because the Democrats have seemingly endless amounts of money that they're blowing here, and it's going to be it's really close in all these races in Arizona, but it's going to be tough to win all those races, and I'll just tell you, we are more likely to go into the House with either 6-3 Republican majority or 7-2 majority than to keep all of our statewide offices. I think we're going to do better in the state legislature, but it has to translate right on up. I don't understand people in Arizona. So here's the deal: there are Republicans that are going to support Mark Kelly, who's the Democrat senator right now. And they're ignoring the fact that Kelly votes 100% with Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer, and we've got to message that and get that out, because all of those issues that people in Arizona are concerned about, whether it's economy, inflation, the woke politics, the border, etc., Mark Kelly has voted with the administration on every one of those. It's going to be tough.
And you're seeing it here in Georgia. You got Warnock, who, I guess races Kelly for the 100% mark, and it actually makes it worse. Warnock makes no pretense of being more socialist in nature. It's just from everything from the student loan to everything else. Andy, thanks for there's a lot we can continue to talk about. I think we've hit the main things. People need to get out. And that last part that you talked about, I'm concerned that Republicans have heard we're going to take the House. Joe Biden's so bad. The Republicans, we're going to take the Senate. That some of them are easing up. They're not giving money. They're not showing up. And I think, would you give that same admonition for people? Don't assume this is a done deal. Don't assume that you don't have a part. Everybody's got to get out and vote in these elections.
Yeah, you got to run through the tape. This is a race. You got to run through the tape. I used to coach girls softball, and I would tell these young girls, you got to run through the bag at first base. Don't stop at first base. You run through the bag to get there as fast as you can. We got to do that. And I will tell you, we've got some tremendous volunteers here in Arizona, and people get it. People are motivated, but you got to work. You got to keep providing the resources and keep the faith and work hard. And if we do those things, I think we win. It's just, the questions will be, does Warren? Do you guys take it in Georgia with your Senate race? Do we take it in Arizona with our Senate race? Do we keep our governorship, in these places? It's all going to come down to grassroots work, and that, in a way, I'm really happy that that's the case, because we've got excellent volunteers and grassroots workers here. And the Democrats are paying theirs, though, Doug. I mean, they're paying people to go out and go door to door.
Folks, we got a big fall coming up. Andy Biggs will be with us probably again. I'm looking forward to seeing Andy hopefully out there in Arizona. We'll work out some stuff. But Andy, thanks for being on the podcast today, getting us updated, and have a great day.
Yeah, you too, Doug. Thanks.
All right, folks. We'll see you next time on the Doug Collins Podcast. Hey everybody, MyPillow. I just wanted to let you know, MyPillow is having the biggest sheet sale of the year. You have all helped build MyPillow into an amazing company that it is today. And now Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to his listeners. The Percale bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they're all on sale. For example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but it is now only $39.98. with our listener promo code. Order now because when they're gone, they're gone. You're not going to be able to get it. These Percale sheets are breathable. They have cool, crisp feel. They come with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. Call 1-800-986-3994. Use the promo code Collins, COLLINS, or you can go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, and use the promo code Collins, COLLINS. Lisa and I sleep on these sheets every night. You will want to have them as well. They're a wonderful product. Go right now, either 800-986-3994, code word Collins, or go to mypillow.com. Also use the code word Collins to get this discount. You will not regret it.